Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this very lovely Tuesday afternoon, and as it's so nice out, had someone come in right down the hill from Brown University. Scott Hewson, a Brown sophomore with the Brown Beekeeping Society. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Well, I appreciate your coming down because I know the Brown Beekeeping Society's spring meeting is this Friday, and as we were talking, this past weekend we saw some extensive Super Bowl celebrations at some colleges. Some kids were lighting things on fire. You are tending to bees. So tell us about the Beekeeping Society at Brown and college students' interest and involvement in beekeeping.
So as you said, we're having our spring meeting this weekend. We're super happy to start off the spring semester. Our mission with beekeeping, as well as with keeping bees off campus, is to really spread the word about bees and the problems that are really happening in the world with bees today.
Well, that's why I wanted you to come in, because we hear a lot about sort of the peril that the honeybee is in. I mean, do you think the continued interest, especially in beekeeping and amongst the young generation, is one piece of hopefully keeping that beekeeping puzzle intact and moving forward?
Well, definitely spreading the word and talking about bees is a good step forward in increasing the public image that bees have as a part of our environment. But there's definitely tons more work to do in training people to keep bees or respect their environment, and also changes to industrial regulations for using bees in agricultural practices.
Now, when did you get interested and involved in beekeeping?
So I actually had 2 hives when I lived in Virginia. This was freshman and sophomore year of high school. But since then, I haven't had the chance, and I met a bunch of beekeepers on campus, and I really thought they were cool. And that somehow turned into a social movement to educate people on bees.
Now, you talked about the beekeeping at Brown actually takes place off campus, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, since bees are inherently dangerous animals, although not naturally, it was somewhat of a liability to do them on campus, so we thought doing it on private property was a better idea.
And where exactly are these bees?
They're a little north of campus. We're actually working with the RISD Beekeeping Society to establish a shared hive, since we don't have any funding right now.
So you talk about that collective effort and talking with other students as well. I'm sure it's sharing best practices, how to make sure the hive is healthy. What are the state of the bees? I mean, how many bees are we talking here?
So we're just setting up one hive, but RISD has 2 other hives that they have set up in the past years. The one hive is a relatively small amount of bees, although it's in the thousands, and that is, there can be several hives in a certain vicinity, but it's not that many bees.
As you said, but close could be, as you said, as many as 1,000.
As many as 1,000, but if you think about the size of campus, or the fact that bees can be anywhere, whether or not it's private property, it's not actually that many.
And so oftentimes we see beekeepers, especially in residential areas, even here in the city, getting on the beekeeping suit. I mean, for the average person who doesn't know what goes into beekeeping, what does it take to tend to this hive? And talk with us about a typical week as you don your beekeeping hat when you're not doing your computer science work.
Okay, well, actually, it's really interesting. Beekeeping is mainly a hobby, and beehives especially, thrive on negligence with beekeepers. So, when you go into a hive, per se, you would actually be interfering with their natural processes. And so a lot of the work that beekeepers do is just checking that there are no parasites, checking that there are no diseases, making sure that the queen has enough space to work, and that the honey stores are sufficient enough for the winter.
Very good. Now, you've got the meeting this Friday, and we talked a little bit about the importance in your goal to bring in speakers on a sort of both local and national level as experts, because if anyone's followed the news, there is concern about the numbers of honeybees at this time and things that might be affecting them overall. And I think a lot of people know or might have an idea about the importance of honeybees. I mean, as the honeybee goes kind of the rest of everything in nature.
Absolutely. Well, actually, in this recent year, we've only seen a decrease. Every year, there's a significant decrease in hives that die over the winter because of the harsh winters in the United States. This year, it was only 30%, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually only 9% higher than last year's, and only 2% above the 10-year average. So while we haven't seen a significant decline in the number of bees over the last 10 years, there has been a steady decrease in the last 20.
So, talk with us a little bit about environmental factors as you bring in speakers. I think there seems to be a lot of research and a lot of studying going on about environmental factors that are impacting bees. Do you think the community at large is becoming cognizant of it, and do you think we'll see potentially changes again with whether it's a pesticide use or things that could potentially be impacting bees? Is there a cultural shift that's going on or can continue to go on that will enable the bees to be protected and thrive moving forward?
Well, I think that the beekeeping community really is growing, and that the scientific community studying bees because of their importance is definitely very more prominent than it was 20 years ago. But I don't think that there is enough being done to offset the negative impacts of climate change, pesticide use on the total amount of bees in the country and internationally. I think that what will cause a major shift in the beekeeping community, especially in the science community, is when many bees start dying like at alarming rates that threaten the industries that use them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got the meeting this Friday, and as you said, you want to bring in some folks for future meetings as well. I mean, do you have a list of like beekeeping rock stars that if you're like,
yeah.
If I could get this speaker, I want them here at Brown?
Actually, we are super passionate about the people that do beekeeping. Actually, Michelle Obama is a beekeeper. She did beekeeping at the White House. Morgan Freeman is also a beekeeper. There's so many different celebrities. Tom Brady is a beekeeper.
Tom Brady is a beekeeper.
There's so many important people we would love to have on campus, and I think that would really work to further the image of the importance of bees in the environment. Unfortunately, we're also looking more realistically. We're looking for small scientists mostly. We're looking for social people who really have worked in beekeeping with experience, so that they can give our members an idea of the work that we can do on campus and off campus.
Well, very good. Well, it seems if other colleges around the country are similar to Brown University, the future of bees and beekeeping could be quite bright. So, Scott Hewson from Brown University, I appreciate you taking the time to come down. And we're going to go a little more outside Rhode Island in just one moment here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for tuning in this very gorgeous Tuesday afternoon here in downtown Providence and around the state. We're going to get a little outside the state here as we welcome Kellen Ingalls with the number 9 wind farm. Kellen, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to Skype in and give us an outside perspective about a new opportunity for wind energy here in Rhode Island, but produced in Maine. Now, here in Rhode Island, we know very well of the deep water wind development, but this is a new opportunity of a wind farm in Maine to provide potentially power here in Rhode Island. So tell us a little bit about the number 9 wind farm.
Right, so the number 9 wind farm is up in Aroostook County, Maine, which is about as far as you can go without hitting Canada. It's 250 megawatts, and it's in timber country, so there are lots of existing roads and cleared spaces that we can take advantage of without causing a whole lot of wildlife and wetland impacts. And it's being proposed by EDP Renewables. We're about the 4th largest operator of wind farms in the country.
So talk with us a little bit about that choice of land and also looking at Rhode Island as the potential end user.
Sure, so it's kind of a no-brainer up there as far as the land is concerned. It's a great wind resource. It's a compatible use. They timber harvest pretty actively throughout the year. There's hunting, snowmobiling, and all those uses will be preserved and made even better. And then selling power into Rhode Island, another no-brainer. The governor has some pretty ambitious energy goals, and we're anxious to meet them with clean power.
So let's talk a little bit about that amount. Now, again, you mentioned 250, is it megawatts? That could potentially power over 100,000 Rhode Island homes.
That's right. 109,000 is the calculation I've got. And that's based on the average use for each household in Rhode Island. So it's a lot of energy.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. Now, again, here in Rhode Island, as we said, we know about wind opportunities that we've seen be developed here. Now, this is kind of a new construct looking at outside the state. But as you mentioned, there are opportunities as presented by the state government here under this current administration. So what does that process look like to number 9 wind farm as it's eyeing the state as an end user?
Well, we've already submitted a bid into the state, and they're evaluating the proposals right now. So our fingers will remain crossed for the time being. Any proposal within the ISO New England grid, anybody who can connect to the grid that we all pull power from that has renewable energy is eligible to participate.
And so let's talk a little bit about the cost structure. There are oftentimes folks who might raise eyebrows and say, well, aren't renewables expensive? What do you have to say to those folks as this is part of a larger package to diversify the energy options that are needed here in the state?
Yeah, I would say renewables are absolutely not expensive. Onshore wind energy in particular is one of the least expensive forms of clean energy generation. It serves to hedge against fluctuating prices, and so there's no fuel. So when you sign a contract for a long-term power purchase from a wind farm like this, it doesn't rise and fall like the cost of oil, gas, traditional energy sources. You lock in a fixed price that stays low over time. So that's a huge benefit to Rhode Islanders in this case.
Do you think folks in general, as we're talking about renewables and opportunities that, again, are here in the state and the outside the state, how big of the education campaign is a component of what it is that you do to, again, explain how the process works and what number 9 wind farm could potentially provide?
The education campaign is the fun part. I love going around and talking to people about the wind farm, whether it's misconceptions or it's just an eagerness to learn about renewable energy. Wind technician and solar installer, those are 2 of the fastest growing jobs in the United States right now. And so in that way, education is a huge component too. We love to be a part of what's driving that growth.
Well, wanted to have you Skype in again to provide a little bit of a background between number 9 wind farm. What else would you like Rhode Islanders to know while we have you here in studio?
Well, we're excited to bring this opportunity to fruition, we're working with the New England Institute of Technology to train workers right there in Rhode Island to be the new generation of wind turbine technicians and solar installers. So that's another direct benefit along with the low price that goes along with this project.
Well, as I said, wanted to have you in as you're going through the process right now, again, of identifying this opportunity here in Rhode Island. But as you said, it is a competitive bid process as Rhode Island is looking, again, to diversify its energy options. Lastly, while I have you in here, it might be a little outside the box, but, are there, would you say, states or, places to look at that are really sort of leading the country as far as looking at wind energy is concerned?
Well, Rhode Island certainly is with this procurement. It's a pretty admirable thing that the governor has these ambitions to get clean energy for the state. Most of the New England states are pushing really hard for renewable energy. New York as well. So we're in a good country, portion of the country up here. Lots of good things are going to be happening in the near future.
And again, before we let you go, just tell us again, what is the size of that footprint up in Maine, as you said, almost touching Canada?
The size of the footprint, well, it's about from 60 to 100 turbines, depending on what model we go with eventually. But the footprint is pretty small because we're using existing roads and cleared spaces. So it's pretty minimal impact for a lot of power.
And finally, there's a lot of photos that are available on the number 9 wind farm. Let's talk specifically onshore wind because, let's go back even a number of years with offshore. Well, looking at, say, Cape Wind, for an example. Is it a cultural shift, if would you say, especially up in Maine, as you said, it's an existing timber land, might not be seen by so many folks, but in maybe perhaps more denser areas. Is that something that perhaps we'll see as part of the conversation moving forward? Again, the incorporation literally of wind power into the landscape.
Yeah, it's always a part of the conversation. Every project, when it goes through permitting, is evaluated for its impact on scenery, the spaces around it. And number 9 is pretty unique in that the studies we've done so far, we have zero impact to scenic resources in the area. So we're pretty unique in that regard. It's a pretty special site, and that's always a part of the mix.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time, again, to explain to Rhode Islanders here a little bit more about number 9 wind farm. We'll provide links to it as well. And, of course, as you go through the process, we'll continue to follow this story moving forward. Perhaps we'll be talking with number 9 wind farm soon. So, Kellen Ingalls, thank you so much for taking the time to Skype in today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Okay, we'll let you go. And don't go anywhere. We're going to get back a little more local here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center in just one moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for continuing to watch with us this Tuesday afternoon. Talked a couple of environmental topics, but now we're going to get over to the topic of health. I would like to welcome Norelis Consuegra. It's Congenital Heart Defect Week, and you're here to share your story.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your coming in because it's an important week, both here in Rhode Island and state and countrywide, to bring awareness to congenital heart defects. As of 2010, the number was at 1 million children and 1.4 million adults living with congenital heart defect. But you've got a personal story, and this is why you're involved with this Awareness Week.
Yeah, so my son, Tristan, is 22 months old, and he was born with a congenital heart defect known as hypoplastic left heart syndrome, meaning that he was born with no left side of his heart working. The surgeries that he's undergone have been 2. He requires 3. The first one occurred 2 days after he was born.
So tell us a little bit, when you had gotten that diagnosis, what was going through your mind, and how you were able to get resources and help and know what was going on.
I was 21 weeks pregnant, and I went for a routine ultrasound that you normally get, and it was on Halloween in 2016, and the technician came in, and you can tell when something is not looking correctly. Doctors came in, they said, we think there's something wrong with your baby's heart. November 9th, I went up to Boston Children's Hospital because they referred us to go there, and it was confirmed that he had HLHS, which is the acronym for his defect. Going through my mind, a lot of it's a blur, to be honest with you, but you fight for your family, you do things for your family. Resources, right away you start trying to research, what does this mean, what can I do, what do I need to learn to bring this baby into this world, and who will live with this defect for the rest of his life. Luckily, we did find a lot of information on Facebook. There's a lot of groups that are generated and are created, and slowly connecting with families throughout the world, throughout the country, and slowly connecting with Rhode Island families too.
And so this Awareness Week has a number of components to it. So I know that they had tried to tap you last year to sort of take the helm, but you said need a little time. Now, 2019, ready to bring this out. Walk us through the week and all of the events that are going to be taking place, again, to raise awareness around congenital heart defects.
So on Thursday, February 7th, Senator Sandra Cano and Representative Karen Alzate are going to be introducing a resolution in each chamber of the General Assembly to initiate the Congenital Heart Defects Awareness Week, with announcing some of the families that we connected with and the names of the children and their defects. And on Monday, on the 11th, we were able to get together a health panel that consists of Tristan's cardiologist, his heart surgeons coming down from Boston Children, an organization, it's My Heart New England, that does a lot of things with the community, and other families that are affected by this, just to bring awareness and really talk about there's over 40 different types of congenital heart defects. Every child's different. Luckily, we have a good support system. It's important to really get your family behind you, your families and friends, and other heart families that can help you go through this process.
Now, being so intimately involved with your son and following what he needs to do now moving forward, from the healthcare standpoint, what does the future look like with research and ability to be able to address and help both children and adults living with congenital heart defects?
Well, interesting with Tristan's condition, the type of surgery that he's required, and they pretty much reconstruct the blood flow. So the right side of his heart will be doing all the work of his heart. So the research, there hasn't been a lot where these surgeries started happening in the 1980s. So we don't have a lot of adults, per se, who are in their 40s and 50s living with HLHS. So I think the research, I know that in Congress they did pass more funding this year. Because again, raising awareness, such as being here with you, and I really appreciate that, we can talk about it, and then that way the legislators are aware, and they could put a face to this disease, and then provide the tools to the doctors who can then perform these operations that are giving a chance to people and to our kids. So right now, every day is a blessing. We know that there are adults now that are living longer. So we're hoping that the research can provide a lifelong for the people that live with this defect.
Well, as I said, I appreciate your taking the time, again, because it is an awareness week, again, not here just in Rhode Island, but all around the U.S., with events planned that we'll be sure to provide links to as well, because as you said, part of it too is making sure that other families that are out there having also that community to be able just to relate, I'm sure. Do you expect a lot of these families to turn out this week?
Yes, we have about 10 families that will be at the State House on Thursday, and we're just trying to reach out to as many people that we can. Their invitation is on Facebook. I do have a Facebook page for Tristan. It's Hearts for Tristan, and the invite's there, and you can get the direction where the event will be on Monday, which will be the Community Center on Prairie Avenue. And again, reach out and just connecting and helping us get the word out and reaching more families when someone's diagnosed. It can be a very lonely place. It was for me, and just creating that family, the network, and where the resources are of how to make this journey, because it is a lifelong journey that we live with every day.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time again to come in and share your journey, your perspective, your advocacy, again, as this week takes place and going into Monday as well. But as I said, we'll provide links for folks to learn more. But Norelis Consuegra, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in today. And thank you for watching today here on a gorgeous day in downtown Providence and around the state. Would like to welcome Scott Hewson from Brown talking about the Brown Beekeeping Society. Also Kellen Ingalls from the No. 9 Wind Farm in Maine, with a current application in to provide wind energy to Rhode Island, and of course, Norelis Consuegra. We'll be back again here tomorrow on Wednesday. Laura Afonso will be kicking off at 3 o'clock with food and drink. I'll be back at 4, breaking down President Donald Trump's State of the Union and more. So continue to tune in to GoLocalProv.com and find us on Facebook throughout the evening, but we'll see you back here tomorrow in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.